There's a lot going on this time of year at the Idaho State House. Committee meetings, bill proposals, and key debates that could shape Idaho's future. I'm James Dawson, state government reporter for Boise State Public Radio, and I spend my days from January to April sorting through the action at the legislature so you don't have to. Sign up for my weekly newsletter, Legislative Roundup, and you'll get each week's biggest news and developments from the session delivered straight to your inbox every Monday morning. Sign up for Legislative Roundup at our website, boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. The political landscape is changing fast, both nationally and here at home in the Gem State. The Idaho legislature has been looking at a number of bills this year that could have impacts for everyday Idahoans. And since we are in the midpoint of the session, we wanted to see how it's going from a civil liberties perspective. So joining us now is Amy Dundon. She is legislative strategist with the American Civil Liberties Union of Idaho. Amy, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Gemma. I'm happy to be here.
So first, Amy, talk to us about your job. What do you do as a legislative strategist?
Yeah, I look at legislation as it comes in and I read it and analyze it. I might pass it on to our legal team if there's some real concerns, but mostly I do the work of translating legislation into other kinds of documents that folks can understand. And those people are everyone from lawmakers to directly impacted community and the general public. So lots of bill analysis, lots of public education.
And how long have you been working with the Idaho legislature?
So I started at the ACLU of Idaho as a legislative strategist just a few days really before the 2023 legislative session started. So this is now my third session.
So it was trial by fire that first time, right?
It really was. It was sort of like, here's your phone, there's the State House, go.
So has this year been different from past years that you've covered, and why or why not?
Yeah, I think a lot about this. It has been different. I think, in 2023, it felt very hectic. I was learning, but even folks who are sort of more seasoned than I am, who are in similar positions at different organizations and lawmakers themselves, spoke about the ways that the volume of bills felt, pretty substantially increased. And then in 2024, it was no different. 2024 felt a little faster, I think. There was a slight on-ramp in 2023 that just wasn't there in 2024. And this year, it is, again, the busiest session, right? Like it is the busiest session anyone's been through. But more importantly, I think there's a change in the tone of the state legislature. Of course, there's new lawmakers, but there's also there have been important shifts in legislative leadership. So who's running committees, who's in charge of the Senate, all of that is a little bit different. I think also, you pointed out both federally and at the state level, we're seeing changes. I think what I'm sensing is that lawmakers are emboldened in a way to, write laws that are blatantly unconstitutional. And I think that might be a result of what we're seeing at the federal level. It's my sense.
So I know that the ACLU of Idaho tracks a number of bills during the session. So how many are you tracking this session?
Oh, Gemma, so our bill tracker, our internal tracker, I was looking at it this morning, as I do. I'm over 130 bills so far this session, which is quite significant. Although it's important to name, there's already 100 bills, proper bills, right? Like not resolutions or memorials, 100 bills in the Senate and over 225, I think, in the House. And this is the 39th legislative day. So it's busy.
So just a few that you're paying attention to. Let's talk about some of them, shall we? And can we start with immigration? What bills are you watching in that regard?
Yeah, it's a tough area. So we saw an initial bill come out of the House Bill 11, that really was a direct copycat of Texas's SB 4, which is still tied up in the courts. This is a law that in Texas, and if it were to pass in Idaho, would create new state crimes of immigration and also create, a de facto state-run immigration um, process within Idaho, which is in direct conflict to federal regulations and, stipulations that say immigration is a federal issue. HB 11 is, it's still there. We can see it on the legislative website, but it appears to have been replaced by HB 83, which really not too many changes were made. It's essentially the same bill, so we would still have the state crime of unlawful entry and this unconstitutional state-run immigration enforcement mechanism. Very concerning. We also, on the Senate side, saw Senate Bill 1039, which is slightly narrower than either of the House bills, but is still deeply concerning for its constitutionality. And then importantly, we've seen a couple bills. There's one that is stylized as an anti-immigration bill that has to do with voting. We already know that non-citizens can't vote in elections. This bill says that out loud, also makes it a state crime, and would have implications for our voter rolls. And then there's another bill, HB 135, I believe it is. I want to double check that. This bill, it's really an egregious attack on basic human decency. It would remove federal protections that limit lawful presence verification, right? So if you need public benefits, generally speaking, state agencies may or may not check your immigration status, but typically it is not the case that we would ask for citizenship for things like vaccines or shelters or soup kitchens. And HB 135, I was correct. That's the name of the bill. This would do all of that, right? So it would put folks who are undocumented at severe risk of not being able to access just basic human needs, things like crisis counseling centers, intervention centers, et cetera.
So let's talk about other bills as well. You're tracking some to do with speech. I'm assuming things like free speech.
Yeah, there's an interesting overlap that we're seeing between speech rights and censorship, and then also the rights of LGBTQ folks and particularly trans folks. So we can think about something like House Bill 41, which has to do with flags in the classroom. So this was really, stylized as a distraction-free learning environment. We want to get back to norms and not have any flags, except for, the United States flag and other official flags. But it's clearly censorship because it says that some flags are allowed and others aren't. And the ones that are banned it's a content-based ban, right? So they're banned because of what they symbolize. There are strong protections against the government interfering with speech if it's based on content. So I think we're also the overlap between speech and other kinds of rights are appearing in anti-DEI legislation that really censor academic freedom and freedom of expression within college campuses. We're seeing interesting legislation that has to do with sex ed and sexuality education that would place teachers and students' rights, speech rights, at risk. So yeah, this interesting overlap. There's an index, I think, of these bills that have to do with both speech and also, the rights of every Idahoan to, be in a learning environment or at work in a way that feels respectful and also equal to everyone else.
And I know you mentioned LGBTQ. Are there other bills specific to that community that you are watching besides the ones you just spoke about?
Absolutely. In the past few years, we've seen just a tremendous increase in bills that attack the basic dignity of trans Idahoans and trans youth in particular, but the LGBTQ community more broadly. So this year, right up top, the first few days of session, we saw a couple of bills that do not carry the force of law. They're either resolutions or memorials. One was urging the Supreme Court of the United States to revisit Obergefell, and basically is putting equality protections for same-sex marriages at risk in a sort of indirect way, right? The state of Idaho is asking the Supreme Court to review this protection that folks have. We saw another one that was commending some anti-trans public statements and actions that the Boise State volleyball team made. We're definitely tracking other bills that would have, more material harm for LGBTQ Idahoans. One is HB 49 that would have to do with access to basically public space, right? This is a bill that would require public entities to ensure that trans folks enter a bathroom according to the sex that they were assigned at birth. The enforcement here is deeply troubling. It calls into question some, real privacy concerns. And also, I think for these entities who would be sued if, in fact, a trans person was in a bathroom, it's very concerning to think about the type of policy that they would have to implement to avoid legal challenge. So, yeah, it's rough out there.
And let's talk about some criminal justice bills that you're looking at as well.
Absolutely. So, this year we've seen, once again, a bill that attempts to create a mandatory minimum fine for very small quantities of marijuana possession. We've seen a bill that has to do with riots, and it extends, the types of actions that would qualify as a misdemeanor for a riot to include physical injury, which is quite a broad statement. We're seeing domestic terrorism again, and also bills that have to do with strategic facilities, which essentially is an anti-protest bill, but it creates new crimes about, where people can interrupt certain processes in public facilities, et cetera. We're worried about all of these bills because most of them are not only racial justice issues and social justice issues, but they would have a huge impact on our public defense system, which we have for years attempted to work with the legislature to create a fix. Public defense is in pretty dire straits. And all of these bills, we could imagine down the road, would have a huge impact. This is also true of immigration, right? If we're creating new state crimes, folks are going to need public defenders. 4 out of 5 people can't afford a private attorney. The last criminal justice bill I will mention is the firing squad bill, which is deeply troubling. It would make the firing squad the primary method of execution in Idaho, and it would implement an automatic firing squad, which is very unusual. So those are a little sample of the types of criminal justice work we're doing.
Can you also mention just a few of the other bills in the legislature that you're concerned with, and that maybe people might want to keep their eye on as well?
Yeah, there's a bill, HB 59, that has to do with religious and moral exceptions for healthcare providers. This is one of the bills that sort of pits religious freedom against non-discrimination protections. And so it would allow a medical provider to refuse treatment to someone if they didn't agree on religious grounds with the type of treatment. We're concerned here that, it's possible, and a lawmaker said this during committee, that it is possible that a patient might not even be made aware of the type of treatment that they can access because of a doctor's refusal to treat or not treat a particular issue. There's a suite of voter rights issues. SJR 101 would increase the threshold for any ballot initiative. It would have to be approved by 6% of the voters in all 35 counties, which would create a troubling situation. If one county decided not to participate, it would be a de facto veto. We did see a bill actually that would allow the governor to veto any ballot initiative. That bill, thankfully, did not pass out of committee. So these types of attacks on, the fundamental sort of core of our democracy are deeply troubling. The other thing I think that's important is there are several bills that appear to be reconfiguring who has power in the state. By that I mean that administrative agencies, rules. There's several bills that have to do with allotting the state legislature more power than it has had in the past in terms of qualifications for certain public agencies and other rules that they might have.
I have about a minute left with you. So really quickly, what can folks do if they want to get involved, or maybe they want to speak to lawmakers about any of these bills, for or against them?
Absolutely. So on the ACLU's website, we have a bunch of tools that are really, really useful. You can follow us on social media also. We tend to do, I think, we're pretty good about putting the bills that we're tracking up on socials, and we're on all platforms. But please do visit the ACLU of Idaho.org. We have a bill tracker that you can sign up. We partner with Fast Democracy, which is just an excellent program that allows us to track bills. You sign up, you can select the bills that you're interested or the issue areas that you're interested in following, and then you can get an email reminder, and you can configure, that setup so that you don't get overwhelmed, but you can still keep track of the things that you're interested in. Fast Democracy also has great tools for getting in touch with your lawmakers. And you can also reach out to the ACLU of Idaho if folks are experiencing civil rights or civil liberties concerns. We have, a couple of different options at the bottom of our website. You can fill out an intake report, or you can send us an email, and we're here for you. I just want the public to really be aware of the fact that, the ACLU is a resource. We're a nonpartisan organization. We're a nonprofit. Reach out, and we have info, I promise.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are. We've been speaking with Amy Dundon, legislative strategist with ACLU of Idaho, talking about the Idaho legislature and some of the bills they're watching this year. This is the Idaho Matters podcast. I'm Gemma Gaudet.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.